Hello YouTube, this is Active Asshole on Roids here with another glorious rant, and I do mean a glorious rant, in response to the Ben Affleck, Sam Harris, Bill Maher debacle. Now I haven't watched Real Time in a long time, but you know what? I have a pretty good opinion of Bill Maher, and I have an equally good, positive opinion of Sam Sater and his cohorts, Mike and Matt, and I have had generally a good opinion of the Young Turks, but the bit the Ben Affleck Sam Harris debacle has divided the left on YouTube. And I fall into that camp that sides with Bill Maher and Sam Harris. Guilty as charged. I'm siding with them because I don't like the idea of burying my head in the sand when, if it were evangelical Christians, evangelical conservative dominionists doing the same thing here in the U.S. that ISIS and other Islamic extremist groups were doing, we'd be all up in arms. I think it's downright hypocritical that a sizable faction of the progressive movement is literally engaging in a massive collective act of cognitive dissonance on this issue. I mean, we speak out against extreme religion when it happens here in America, but we seem just eerily hesitant about holding Islam, or should I say Islamic fundamentalism, to the same to the same standards that we would evangelicals here in the U.S. and hard right Catholics. And I don't know why that is. I mean, well, actually, I do know why that is, and a lot of it's because we feel guilty about what happened. Sorry, I had to adjust the light a bit there. It's glaring. We feel guilty about what happened as a result of the Bush administration's actions following 9/11, in which they lied us into a war in Iraq, and over 3 million people were turned into refugees, and over 160,000 Iraqi civilians were killed. And the thing is, I understand where Ben Affleck is coming from, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of these guys who are joining ISIS are not from that area. You see people coming from Australia, people coming from France joining ISIS. This doesn't really smack as much as being a backlash against imperialism as much as it smacks of, say, just straight up religious fundamentalists going crazy and deciding, hey, we're gonna wipe out the more moderate groups in the area and the other ethnic groups and set up an Islamic State. Yeah, we're smart like that. I think it's kind of I think it's kind of hilarious that these jihadists are getting their asses handed to them by Kurdish women commandos. Yeah, it's amazing. It's poetic justice that they're getting their asses handed to them by by women that they're trying to force their misogynistic views off on. I got to give a high five to the Kurdish defense forces, particularly their female soldiers, for doing such a spectacular job of putting ISIS's ass in the wind. But back to the point at hand. We can't allow ourselves to fall into this trap where we allow our pluralism, our tolerance as liberals, to extend to those who are intolerant. We made that mistake with the religious right. We made that mistake with the entire right wing in this country. And look where it's gotten us. I can't seem to adjust the seat. You're always going to have groups in society, anywhere you go, who are going to try their best to take over society from within by taking advantage of the tolerance of our society, of any given society that they're targeting, and trying to worm their way into the mainstream. But we've got to make a choice on the issue of Islam. Liberals, progressives, socialists, we have got to make a choice. Do we fit Islamic fundamentalism, that is the branches of Islam that are feeding into this misogyny, into this just going out of the way and killing women and children and men and just going out of their way to kill people for apostasy? We've got to make a decision on this. And we can't just stay guilty about something that someone from our country did to the Middle East. Because what ISIS and what many other Islamic groups are doing is completely unwarranted. And as an atheist, I find it insulting. I find it absolutely insulting that so many on our side of the political spectrum are using the term new atheist as a slur to target atheists whose only real crime is being outspoken about their atheism. I mean, I expected better from my fellow progressives. I expected better, because this is the kind of thing that I'd expect from the right wing. This is something I would expect from right-wing evangelicals, the shaming of atheists as a means of keeping them quiet. But that's just it. You're not going to guilt me into staying quiet. You're not going to guilt over half the progressive movement into staying quiet about the issues of fundamentalist religion when the other half of the progressive movement that are criticizing our half of the progressive movement. If this were evangelical Christian dominionists and Christian reconstructionists on the right, they would be up in arms about this. They would literally be up in arms and screaming with us about it. But no, because it's Islam, because it is a group that has historically been demonized and threatened and has had their rights violated by the American right, we can't bring ourselves to criticize Islam for being stuck in the Dark Ages. We'll criticize Christianity till the cows come home for being stuck in the Dark Ages. But it's like we want to handle Islam with kid gloves, and it's not doing it's not really doing us any good. Why can't we have this conversation without people who criticize Islam being labeled an Islamophobic? That doesn't mean you're bigoted against followers of Islam. No. That means that you really want to hold them up to a standard and actually have them leave this Dark Age garbage behind and come into the 21st century. It means that we want Islam to do, the followers of Islam, to do the same thing that we expect, that we wish that evangelicals here in America would do. Drop the Dark Age garbage drop all this Bronze Age, desert religion, Levantine bullshit that beats up on women and just and the promotion of violence while hiding behind religion and all that. Drop all this garbage and come into the 21st century. Embrace modernity instead of just hypocritically embracing the fruits of modernity, all the while bashing modernity. But my fellow liberals, so many of them just want to bury their heads in the sand over the issue of Islam. And I know I know that part of this might be a full reversal from my video on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict recently, but enough's enough, people. This is getting ridiculous. I mean, my question is, who are the Young Turks and Sam Seder and his cohorts trying to convince? Us or themselves? Sam Seder, his channel, they've the Majority Report, they've already posted 7-8 videos on this. They keep kicking a dead horse with a dead horse, and half the progressive movement isn't buying it. We're not the right wing. We think for ourselves. And you know what? There's no shame in admitting that the other side is right on something. Islam being one of them, though for very different reasons. Two different groups of people can have completely different, can come to a completely, how can I put this? Two different groups of people who are completely diametrically opposed to one another can come to the same conclusions from utterly just divergent, from completely different philosophical directions. I think that's a great way to articulate what I'm saying. Us on the left who don't want to bury our heads in the sand over the issue of Islam, who don't want to fit Islamic fundamentalism into that neat little box of tolerance and going through all the cognitive dissonance to do it, even though we would never in a million years do the same thing with evangelical Christian Reconstructionism, because we live with that here at home and we see it for what it really is. And I have to agree with a lot of the detractors, with a lot of the critics of Sam Seder and his producers and the critics of the Young Turks when they say, hey, you guys, you live in your nice little ivory towers in a first world nation. You don't have to deal with the problems caused by Islamic fundamentalist groups any more than the conservatives do. And you don't want to consider what people in the Middle East go through because of groups taking the domestic religion too far. And no, no, it's not a perfect comparison between Christian dominionism and Islamic fundamentalism. It's not. All right. By no means is Islam the worst religion out there. There are plenty worse. But when you have a situation where 20% of all respondents who are self-described Muslims living in industrialized nations, not the Middle East or sub-Saharan Africa or Central Asia, mind you, but industrialized nations, claim that people who leave Islam, that is, people who are apostates, should be killed. 20% of respondents. Holy buttfuck. You've got an issue. Apply the same standard to Islam that you apply to evangelical Protestantism here in the U.S. Christian fundamentalism and Islamic fundamentalism. two heads of the same fucking dragon. Extreme religion is a bad thing. That's all Bill Maher and Sam Harris were saying. They've said this for years, and they've put them in those kinds of stark terms. And before I leave this at that, I'm going to say that to those people who actually grew up here, I don't know how best to say this, grew up here on the issue of Islamic fundamentalism on our side of the board, and actually recognized that it is, in fact, a very real, a very real dead weight to the progression of mankind, every bit as much as Christian fundamentalism, and are unapologetic in saying so. I applaud you. I actually thought about doing something far more extreme than this in response to the Sam Seder, the Young Turks circus parade of foolishness that they've unleashed in the past few days. Just 14 videos, just kicking a dead horse with a dead horse over this one issue, and discrediting themselves every step of the way, digging themselves into a hole, losing who knows how many subscribers over this issue. I mean, this issue right here, this issue right here, okay? We need to understand that Islamic fundamentalism is as much a threat to the values of liberalism, to the values of progressive politics, as conservative Christian fundamentalism. We need to understand it. We need to get that through our heads, pull our heads out of our asses, and stop pretending like it's not a problem. All right? It's okay to admit that the right wing, though for completely different, but for completely heinous reasons, might be right on an issue, on just one little issue, more right than we'd like to admit. And believe me, I feel like going and taking a shower after admitting that. I feel like going and literally showering for 20 minutes, because I haven't felt this dirty admitting that the right wing might be right about an issue since I admitted that Ann Coulter was right when she said that libertarians are losers. Okay? Even though we believe that for completely different reasons, admitting that someone that I absolutely despise, that I find just deplorable humans in general, that those kinds of people are actually right about something in any way, in any remote way, that hurts up here. and it is the fastest, I could just, oh God, it makes me sick to my stomach having to admit it, okay? It makes me sick. But Islamic fundamentalism is completely adverse to modern liberalism, to the Enlightenment, to modernity, for the same reasons. And no amount of saying, oh, well, it's just imperialism that caused them to do that. It's just imperialism. That ignores the fact that a lot of the members of ISIS, it completely ignores the fact that many of the members of ISIS are coming from first world industrialized nations, from well-off segments of society. We can't just continue to say, hey, oh, it's imperialism. That might play into it, but there's more at work here. There is a lot more at work here than just that. And no, I understand. I understand that imperialism has had a big role to play in this, in the destabilization. Hell, it's the primary thing that's destabilized the Middle East. But you know what? At least half of that work has actually been done by the locals in that part of the world. And no amount of lying to ourselves about this and saying, oh, well, we you know, Islam isn't this way. It's a religion of peace. Really? You mean like Christianity's a religion of peace? Hmm? Okay. All right. This is Active S on Roids. Peace out, everybody.